Welcome to the iWrite Radio videocast and podcast. This Sunday the 22nd. God, it's only a month away from Christmas. My name's Stuart Lockhead. Sitting beside me now is Norrie Stewart. Good morning or good afternoon, Norrie. I'll get it right yet.
Hi, Stuart.
Today, I think we're going to cover a couple of articles by Joanna Cherry. We kind of agreed just before we opened the mic that Jo Cherry kind of talks soft and acts hard. Not right, Norrie?
I think I kind of agree with that. I might put it another way. She actually backs up what she says. And as much as a lot of politicians just talk and don't act, Joanna Cherry seems to be one of the rare ones who backs her opinions with action.
Yeah.
Which, you know, I suppose is kind of the same thing.
I mean, after we've covered a bit more about Jo Cherry, we can see what Peter A. Bell's got to say on it, which is kind of connected as well. Because see, you couldn't exactly describe Jo Cherry as far away from, you know, the exact opposite of the current management of the SNP. And yet she's held up as the alternative leader, is she not?
I think she's a sensible, realistic politician. And no doubt that applies to her as a person. I've never met her, but I mean, she's a QC. She understands that process can be a brake on going forward. So you kind of have to get your ducks in a row to make things happen. I must admit, I was very disappointed she didn't get the chance to stand for Edinburgh Central. Because unlike, God, I've forgotten his name, Angus Robertson, who I think is much more of a kind of traditional political animal who talks the game well. I'm not sure how effective he is when it comes to getting policy onto the statute, but Joanna Cherry has, I mean, even stuff she's done, if you like, alongside politics, her court case and so on. Mm-hmm. She made it happen.
Yeah.
And I think she's the only viable opposition or potential leader so apart from Nicola Sturgeon.
We're winding back from next weekend. Next weekend, we've got the SNP's virtual annual conference. Late. There's controversy about the members of the NEC, controversy about motions that haven't been allowed onto the agenda. There's controversy about the finances. Is there anything else I've missed out?
Well, there's the Salmond inquiry, of course. Sorry, not the Salmond inquiry. The inquiry into the new system for beating up Salmond from the civil service.
Officially, it's the harassment inquiry.
Right.
It's shorthand for Salmond, isn't it?
If you need a more exhaustive list and a more in-depth look at it, you need to go to Iain Lawson, his blog.
And he too is, he's an outsider, but he's been involved. I mean, he's a close friend. No, he's a close colleague of Alex Salmond. By the way, did you happen to catch Alex Salmond? Apparently he was almost live. He wasn't on national television and he wasn't on RT, Russia Today. They had cavalcades of cars going around Scotland, yes groups, going around Scotland yesterday. And one of them went to Alex Salmond's house in Aberdeenshire and called in on him. So he came out of the house and stood in the garden and talked to them over the wall.
All right. Okay. No, I missed that.
He didn't say anything.
Well, I like Iain Lawson. I like what he's doing, in as much as he's trying to bolster opposition to the woke element of the NEC, as is Joanna Cherry, because I think they're right. we do seem to have been taken over by a section whose priority is not independence. And it needs to be sorted. If it doesn't get sorted, I see real trouble down the line.
Careerists, they're called. People
Well,
who go,
I'm not entirely sure that's fair. I think their agenda, the primary aim of their agenda doesn't seem to be independence.
well, I mean, and we're old white men, so we're not going to necessarily agree with it very much a younger generation is going to say, are we?
Well, I don't think that's fair either. I mean, the trans issue is, for me, really difficult. How do you square that circle? How do you protect women's rights and trans rights?
I mean, you and I don't come from a section of white old men that've got any big issue with trans people at all, far from it.
No, but
we've personal friends that fall into that category.
Yeah, and we have personal friends who are women. You know, it's how do you protect the rights of both groups without it costing either group? And that's really difficult. I've always felt that this issue has been argued the wrong way. It's about people who use the trans community as camouflage. Predators who use the trans community as camouflage.
If you were going to put moles into the SNP to cause damage to the cause of independence, putting them in as trans activists wouldn't be a bad plan, would it?
I'm not going to go down that route because I think there's enough bad blood being generated without making even the possibility of that. I don't even want to see that on the table.
Well, look, what if I throw into the mix that it's slightly gone sideways? We were talking earlier just about Kevin McKenna, who describes the demise of the Labour Party. And I liked a bit of shorthand. There's a little bit right at the start, which I quite liked. I don't think you're going to disagree with it. The difference between the Labour Party and you see, the Labour Party, members of the Labour Party, they care enough to fall out. We're forever hearing about the left falling out with each other. Whereas the Tories all pass along the Conservative way will soon converge into two: how to make more money and acquire more property, and how to keep it. Whereas, so they have no principles in the Conservative Party. The trouble is that the left has got so many different principles, it's hard at times to agree on anything.
Well, I'm not sure I agree with the reasons for the infighting in the Labour Party and the SNP, let's be frank here. I'm not sure that it is about anything more than power. Now, it might be about the power to do what you want done, be that on trans issues or whatever, but it's about power. And the NEC in both parties, certainly in the Labour Party, wield a great deal of power. So if you control the NEC, you control the party. Now, that didn't used to be the case with the SNP.
No, but we can see that over the weekend there with effectively the NEC and the Labour Party readmitting Jeremy Corbyn, but Keir Starmer, the leader of the party, refusing to give him the whip.
Yeah, and that's why it's important now. As I say, I'm not sure, because there are so many different priorities on the people who are prepared to work hard enough to get on the NEC. I'm not sure that's really what the problem is. The problem has to be that the NEC has to be open to criticism and it has to be transparent so you can see what the individuals are voting for on the NEC. Now, yes. Apparently it's been the practice on the SNP NEC to have public votes. Everybody knew how you voted. It's a recent development that they've become anonymous. And that is a step in the wrong direction.
There was also some other national body within the SNP that used to meet as well, according to Iain Lawson. I forget what it was, the full name of it, but used to also have some power which is no longer meeting.
Well, yeah, and that has to be sorted, because even if the hierarchy of the SNP don't like what they're being asked to do, at the end of the day, they have control of the legislation they put through Holyrood. So they can water it down. They can play with it, as far as the country is concerned. But that's a totally different thing to the party. If the party were to decide not to be members of NATO, for instance, which at one time was
the big issue,
the will of the party, that has to be allowed to at least be debated. So there's sure enough problems.
I mean, it's not just things like trans issues. You've also got grouse moors. That was a motion. There was a suggestion about people are not happy about the whole question of grouse moors and shooting in Scotland. And that was a motion that wasn't allowed on the agenda either.
Yeah, but I mean, my point really, the big issue here is you could argue that the Labour Party have wasted so much energy arguing amongst themselves. Be that on points of principle or not, it has allowed a laser sharp focus on winning power for the Tory party. I mean, the Tory party have internal strife as well. They just don't wash it in public. I mean, Brexit is because of Tory party internal strife. But they're in power.
That today? Do we need
well,
to
the point I'm making is the Labour Party could never have got to the point the Tory party are at, taking us out of Europe. Their internal strife would have been a benefit to that.
We appear to be facing the hardest of hard Brexits. And by end of next week, we're hitting a crisis point on that issue as well.
I still think they'll come up. They'll cobble together some sort of deal.
All right. Well, let's go back to what Joanna Cherry's group have now done. They've launched Nicola Sturgeon is being urged to launch an independence campaign imminently as her party faces a power struggle over key posts on its ruling body. So says Kathleen Nutt. Now, she's the Holyrood correspondent for The National. We see her on TV quite a lot, don't we? Sorry?
No, on you go.
18 candidates. A slate of 18 candidates has been put forward by the Common Weal group in the SNP, backed by Joanna Cherry. Also, two of her staff members, Fraser Thompson, Katrina MacDonald, and amongst the candidates for the NEC is MPs Neil Hanvey. Is he still no longer an SNP member? He had to.
He must be if he's standing for the NEC.
Oh, he must be back in the SNP, because they took away the whip from him and then he stood, but he still got in Kirkcaldy. Douglas Chapman and former MP Roger Mullen. All 18 contenders are being supported by the Common Weal group. Now, Kathleen Nutt suggests that 18 out of around 30 NEC positions, or 60% of the posts, would give them a significant majority on the body, but I think there's a lot more than 30 NEC positions. Some of them are from minority groups, aren't they?
I couldn't tell you what the numbers are.
40.
I actually think that one of their problems has been generated by these seats that automatically go to, well, I'm maybe being unfair calling them fringe organizations, but shall we call them organizations with specialist interest?
Yeah. You get disability, you get black and BAME.
Ethnic minority.
I'm not sure what other the speciality groups there are.
Well, and your problem with that is democratically, is it a fair percentage, that one seat? I don't know. I actually don't know enough about the numbers and who sits on it.
No, but we're not.
But it seems to have caused problems. I mean, if Alan Smythe has criticised the number of seats that go to these minority groups. He's hardly what you would call a radical. He's very much in with the elite bricks of the SNP.
That's true. He doesn't. He's expressed a distaste for the NEC members that come in from these special interest groups, hasn't he?
Yeah, and it might well be the simplest solution, is to rebuild the NEC around its original makeup.
Oh, that's going to be difficult now. You know, I think it was the huge expansion in membership, which they weren't prepared for, which you then probably needed to reconstruct all the rules for a much bigger party. And isn't it too late now?
It's never too late, sure. It might be a real bloodbath, but it's a fight that's worth winning. Whether it's worth fighting, I don't know. But it's become a real issue for members.
I would say there's somebody else that's seeing the SNP conference next weekend as a critical event. You've got Iain Lawson, who's a long-term SNP member. I know he's a friend of Kenny McCaskill, again a long-term SNP member, but they're seen as quite close to Alex Salmond. So they could be seen as a bit more controversial. But Peter A. Bell, on the other hand, has been determined that both votes, let's say at next May, should be SNP 1 and 2. And he just wants to focus on the one issue, which is getting independence.
Yeah, I mean, I do think there is a chance. It won't happen before May, but there is a chance that after May, there is a split of what you might call radical independence supporters and think of a word that doesn't involve Tory independence supporters.
There's got to be some in there, in with us, you know. There is, I mean, generally speaking, outside the party, the view is that it has moved to the centre or to this, or certainly a wee bit more to the right since Nicola Sturgeon's taken over. Is that fair?
No, I don't think it is fair. I mean, the SNP were never more left than slightly left of centre. I mean, they've run out of ideas not because they haven't done radical things. I mean, you've got a Scottish Tory party now supporting free higher education.
Will they? That's just, come on. Yes. They're going into an election saying that.
Yeah,
I won't support it in reality.
I understand that. But how can the Scottish branch of the Tory party support free education in Scotland and not support it in England? How does that work? So, you know, the SNP has done a Maggie Thatcher and is turning. I mean, you hear them all the time banging on about support for welfare, giving more money to councils. That's not a Tory party policy.
Well,
you know, so they've moved the Tory party to the centre.
Okay.
In Scotland.
All right.
Because the Tory party are now looking to fight the election on SNP ground.
Well, that's another issue altogether. If you look at bear in mind it's been a Scottish Tory party virtual conference this weekend, and Douglas Ross has been getting a free ride from the media.
Absolutely outrageous today.
Did you see him on Politics Scotland this morning with Andrew Kerr?
Absolutely outrageous.
Never interrupted.
Andrew Kerr had his questions basically ignored. What do you think of Priti Patel? Is she a bully? Not my decision. I can take no responsibility for this. You're leader of the Tory party in Scotland and you don't have an opinion on this. Oh, I haven't seen the report. Well, maybe you should ask to see the report then. You're the leader, as you keep telling us, of the Tory party in Scotland. No, he got a total free ride today.
Oh, absolutely. I thought I was going to go quite angry, but then as soon as I saw it was Andrew Kerr doing the show, I knew that. I mean, he is the. I'm being careful for my language here, but he real brown nose his way up the tree at the BBC. That's his plan, obviously.
I always remember seeing him in the background of a newsroom shot with a saltire on his desk. And I remember wondering whether he used it to wipe his nose.
Ah, no, those people, he probably supports the football and the rugby, you know. There's all these 90-minute Patriots around, don't forget. What else did we have actually this morning? Well, let's not move away from it. What about Mar? Did you think there was anything worth talking about in Mar this morning? Sunak was on, telling us not very much.
Again, I thought he gave Rishi Sunak a very easy time. There are 3 million people who pay tax who have been totally left out of any support, financial support from the government at all. These are the so-called PAYE self-employed people for a kickoff. It's 1.5 million of them. So they pay tax just like everybody else, just like the public sector, just like people in private industry. They pay PAYE and they've had not a penny. It's outrageous. It really is when you think about it. I mean, there are people who pay no tax, companies who are paying nothing.
Well, you're right, he got an easy ride. Apparently he's changed, you know, only about 2 months ago, he brought out his plan for the winter. This was as they were, before they announced their tiers. And he's made 5 major changes to that plan already.
Well, I'm not going to be hard on him about it. Had things stayed at the level of summer, a lot more people would have been able to work, but they had to lock down again. And if situations change, your plans have to change. I'm absolutely delighted that he's renewed the furlough scheme. I don't think it goes far enough.
I thought he was stupid to go ahead with what he announced at the time. Goodness me, even we could sit here and see that it wasn't going to be as easy as he thought it was going to be.
Well, if you look around Europe, the number of people that had a long-term furlough scheme in place, the Tories are just absolutely terrified that they have to raise taxes.
Well, bear in mind, you've got Nigel Farage restarting his latest version of UKIP. You've got 70 apparently. What are they called now? They're no longer the ERG, they're the CRG, the COVID resistance group. These people they're the same people that caused Brexit. They're just troublemakers, but he's got to deal with them.
What they're calling for is actually quite reasonable. They want to see the data that supports the decisions the government's making. I mean, there was at Newsnight on Friday, I think maybe, there was a woman on that was quite interesting who said, look, we don't know the damage that's been done to people with all the other problems that the NHS isn't dealing with because of COVID. We haven't seen these stats. And it's brutal. You know, you can get COVID deaths down to 0, but if 20,000 people are dying every quarter because they're not getting cancer treatment,
well,
you know,
I believe I was missed out on my heart condition at the peak of the.
Well, you know, there are
pandemic.
lots of, and the brutal truth is, if COVID deaths outweigh the deaths in the community because of other reasons, are we doing the right thing? Because you can't save everybody. And I'm sitting here as a member of a vulnerable group when I say that. But one of the problems is we've kind of become a nation that doesn't accept there is a cost. You know, we expect everything to be cured and saved and live forever. Well, I've got news for you folks, as I've learned recently, you don't live forever.
Nobody does.
And then you come to questions of quality of life. I mean, Jean Freeman was quizzed today about people being sent out of hospital who were COVID possible into care homes or home. And people don't seem able to understand that you might want to die at home, you know, be your home, a care home or whatever, rather than in a hospital. Because if you're going to go, you're going to go. It's brutal. It sounds callous, but I'm afraid it's a fact of life. Which maybe isn't what you expected to hear from me.
No, it's been a quiet day for news, apart from predicting what's going to happen next weekend. Let's be honest, neither of us even brought up. We both watched Mar and the Scottish version. Neither of us even mentioned it in the plan for this show. It's just one of those mornings for us. Never mind. Sorry, afternoons. We've covered Cherry. What about a brief word of Kevin McKenna again? Kevin McKenna, he's such a strong Labour man, but he's really slags off the quote here, that when he's not happy about either of the parties here in Scotland, is he? He's talking about indolent managerial class who have effected a sleepy takeover of Holyrood. This collection of entitled mediocrities, both Labour and the SNP. Is he right?
I think Kevin McKenna is a red Clydesider. That's how I think he thinks. He's old school, working class Labour, or certainly thinks of himself that way. And the reality is, old school Labour has been gone for a long time. And Labour did such a good job in various areas that old school Labour doesn't exist anymore, and probably doesn't need to. Is he right about the SNP? I think he is. I think he ignores, free prescriptions, free tuition, etc., etc. But they're a gradualist party under the present leadership, not only on independence, but on a lot of other things. The amount of nursery education they've now put in place, free school meals they've now put in place. These are all solid Labour policies that the SNP have enacted.
Certainly, over the first 10 years of the SNP government, I would have agreed with you on that. There seem to be things like BIFAB. I mean, that seems to be a sad story. And things seem to have gone wrong on the ferries, the shipyard at Port Glasgow.
Well, talk to me in April, May, June. Talk to me in June about it. When we're no longer in the EU and we are not constrained by EU rules in insisting that any contracts given in Scotland have to use BIFAB or whatever, then I think you can make the case. At the moment, you can't make the case because the rules don't allow them. And I would suggest that I don't think the rules will allow them anyway, because I think if they favour BIFAB over other companies in the UK, your internal market bill will kick in. I don't think the Scottish Parliament will ever have the power to interfere to that extent.
Well,
I think Westminster will let them. And he's been a bit previous. I mean, it's shenanigans to nationalise the railways. You have to set up an arm's length company to bid for it. You can't just turn around and say, right, the Scottish government are going to run the railways.
Well, you know that down at number 10, you've got Boris Johnson, who supposedly wants to spend, and Rishi Sunak wants to tax. Will Boris get his own way? Will he become a modern monetary supporter?
I don't think he can do that openly. I don't think there are enough voters that understand how it really works. I think that's the problem there. The fact of the matter is that the interest on quantitative easing, that debt is paid to the people that created the debt. So, you know, when we don't have a debt as such, as long as inflation doesn't go wild, it doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. It's toy money in reality. It's a closed system. So,
well, look, Iain MacWhirter has written about modern monetary theory, and you guys, the pair of you and Jimmy, brought me around to supporting it. And it isn't really a theory at all. It's a description of what's been going on for quite a long time, isn't it?
Well, it's a partial description of what's been going on with quantitative easing. The problem is, it's a lot easier to say to somebody who's going to vote for you, sorry, I'm going to have to put your tax up because just like your budget, if you've got to borrow money at some point, you've got to pay it back. People understand how that works, but that isn't how government money works. The banks, the Bank of England, they just press buttons. They don't have gold bars to hand out to cover the paper money they produce. It's electronically done. It's you know, and the really strange thing about it is the interest is paid back. Well, not directly to the Bank of England. It goes to a third company because of the rules.
This fancy...
It goes back to the government. The government owes itself the interest.
Yes, this fancy expression, quantitative easing, is what they use to do it. Yes, they buy the Bank of England buys the government debt, but the government owns the Bank of England anyway. They keep it at arm's length, as if that makes any difference. Well, I thought if you watched Sunak, Rishi Sunak closely this morning, did you notice how careful he was with his words? He didn't want to get trapped into saying anything that could suggest that he was thinking of using more quantitative easing, and he didn't want to use any modern monetary theory expressions, and yet that looks as though the road he's going down.
Well, it wouldn't surprise me if another expression was invented to describe modern monetary theory so they could use it.
Have they? Well, quantitative easing was just part of it, isn't it?
Well, and the other thing is, if he wallops, I don't know, if he puts 5% on VAT, say, right, so it goes up to 25%, which is a tax increase. If he does that, everybody sharing the burden equally will be well, that will be the mantra coming out of number 10.
No, the poor pay more on VAT than the rich. A much larger part of their income goes on tax.
This idea that he might up capital gains tax to the normal taxation rate will hit the upper echelons of the tax-paying public harder.
Do you know what it is at the moment? What is capital? What's the percentage?
10%, I think it is.
Oh my goodness me! Do you know, when the 70s, when I was a young man, really making my way in the world, it was 30%.
Yeah, it's quite a recent thing that it's come down. It's supposed to encourage entrepreneurs, who incidentally aren't getting any money from the government. They're part of the unfurloughed.
Even at 30%, it would encourage people to go into it, developing anything that made a capital gain, because 30% was a lot less, because the income tax and national insurance was higher than that. You know, so
well, it wasn't much higher, Stuart. I mean, it was higher. It was certainly higher for rich people. It's a lot higher.
God, we're talking about things that are so far back.
Well, at one time they were paying 90%, weren't they? Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they massage it. And if they go back into austerity, plus Brexit, we're going to be living on what we can pick off the streets.
I think I got the impression, right, the question I asked you 5 or 10 minutes ago was, who will get their way? The Prime Minister or the Chancellor? I mean, this is a standard question that comes around every year in every government, to be honest. But at the moment, we're talking about Rishi Sunak and Boris Johnson. And we believe that Boris Johnson wants to level up, spend money in the north, spend money on infrastructure, throw the money around. And we're always told that the Chancellor won't do that. But I got a clear impression this morning that Rishi Sunak will support the Prime Minister.
I don't think there's the disparity between
I don't think there is
number
much
10 and the Treasury anymore.
No, not at the moment, no.
I think number 10 has more control. And I think the more popular Sunak gets, the more control will be exerted on him.
That was funny. That was just the question I was about to ask you. What do you think about Mr. Sunak's prospects and his performance this morning?
He'll never be Prime Minister. He's too skinny.
He's very smooth.
He looks like a wee boy that's just outgrown his first school uniform.
Can you see him in the pub?
No. No, I can't.
Do you think he drinks?
I have no idea. But every time I see him now, because his cuffs are always short and his trousers always look too short, I just keep thinking his mother should get round to Marks and Sparks and buy him a new school uniform.
That's not answering my question, is it? You think he's got no prospects of becoming Prime Minister? Who are they going? We know the grey suits are going to get rid of Johnson at some point. Who's it going to be?
Jeremy Hunt.
Jeremy Hunt. Not Michael Gove or Rishi Sunak.
I think Michael Gove is destined to be the Prime Minister that never was. And remember, he's Scottish.
Well, he's not allowed to be. We can't have another Scottish Prime Minister.
I think it'll be a long time before we see another Scottish Prime Minister. In fact, I think the next Scottish Prime Minister will be in Holyrood.
Okay, what do you mean by that? I'm confused.
Well, you won't be First Minister when we get our independence. You'll be Prime Minister of Scotland, won't you?
I suppose so.
And there is only one Scot in the cabinet, isn't there? And that's Gove, and he's an English MP.
And he's adopted an English accent.
Is that what that is? Okay.
Talking about strange Scots politicians, have you heard about George Galloway? Apparently, he's raised £8,500 for his campaign. He's expecting a by-election in Rutherglen and Hamilton West. Margaret Ferrier, the unfortunate SNP MP who caught COVID.
Ex-SNP MP.
Ex-SNP who caught COVID and made a couple of unfortunate journeys from Glasgow to London and back. And depending on circumstances, there might be a by-election in Rutherglen and Hamilton West. Interestingly, the largest not anonymous contribution came from the International Marxist Group.
Oh yeah, what's her name? Mad. Is she not a baroness now?
Yeah, she works for Boris Johnson now, doesn't she?
Yeah. Well, good luck to George.
Well, I mean, what?
I didn't mean that.
No, what is George Galloway seems to have? He looks as though he was taking photographs, selfies with Nigel Farage. Next thing we know, he'll be in Boris Johnson's government as well. What a turnaround!
I just no, I don't even want to talk about him. I mean, I have no idea what he stands for now. How many different parties has he started?
Don't know. He's fiddling with the name of. He got turned down for the name of his prospective Scottish party. What was it? Alliance for Unity?
I don't. Seriously, Stuart, stop talking about him.
All right, okay.
Don't give him any more air. He's a non-entity.
I was going to flash out a picture of a tin of shortbread on his behalf.
Well, before you do that, are we about to finish?
I think we should today.
Right, okay, I'll give you a cartoon to begin with.
Right.
There you go. What a tosser. This is all about Boris's devolution is a disaster quote. Thought it was quite a good one.
I love the third one. Yes, it's a picture I shall remember.
Had I drawn that, I think I would have made the caber penis shaped. But never mind. That's my contribution to Sunday.
Okay. Can I share mine?
Yep. This is from The Simpsons, we should say, isn't it?
Yes, this is from The Simpsons.
Cartoon.
There, right. So here it comes. That one there.
I'm not seeing it.
You're not seeing it. Put it, minimize it again and do it again. Share screen. I'm seeing my screen. Share, right? Okay. There's too many buttons
Here we go.
Now this is it this time. There you go. Wanker's shortbread. This apparently is from The Simpsons. Yep.
Yeah, it is. It's a play on Walker's shortbread, of course.
Of course. So there is somebody in The Simpsons team writing that. There's one or two other things turned up. There's a song as well, but it's so short and the clip isn't very good quality. In any case, we might get blocked. Remember, we got blocked for showing 37 seconds of a penalty miss. And I thought, oh, I don't want to risk getting this show blocked.
Okay.
Stop sharing. Okay. We've seen that one.
Well, I think that'll do us.
Yes, I think we're finished for today. It wasn't the most exciting of days, and I dare say by the time next weekend comes round, we could be over. Some days we just get overloaded with stuff. You know, we end up with 20 topics, trying to chop them down to 3, don't we?
Yeah, and today there was nothing new. It was repeat of stuff, sort of weekend repeat of the week's news, wasn't it? Still.
Very little. Never mind. Always a pleasure to be on with you, Norrie. Thank you very much for the viewers and listeners. Viewers and listeners, that sounds like a good old-fashioned BBC term, doesn't it?
Yeah, you need to start wearing a white shirt and a bow tie, Stuart.
Oh, no, I'm wearing a colourful shirt. You like it? Somebody.
Okay, we'll catch everybody tomorrow.
Bye-bye.
Cheers for listening, folks. Cheers for now.